Okay, so this is an even earlier book by an Orthodox rabbi who is, I don't want to say he's a reformer. He's not. Um, in many ways, it's hard to call any of these folks reformers because of the overtones that it has for us. But I will say that he is interested in innovation and willing to make innovation, um, at, at, and is involved with the beginnings of the reform movement. His name is Mendel Steinhardt, and you can see this says consistoralrata. This consistorate was consists this it was a this is the group that the government in France and in Germany created, um, to be like the liaison between the government and the Jews. And it had there were there was a reformer who seems to have kind of appointed this group in Germany. He had to appoint three Orthodox rabbis. Obviously, there's nobody else, but he appoints rabbis that are, I guess, slightly open-minded. And one of them is Mendel Sternhardt. Now, nobody questions, I don't think, Rabbi Sternhardt's orthodoxy in the way that they might question Rabbi Chorin. There is an academic article or two on the question of, was he a reformer? But I don't think there's a difference you'll see between him and Rabbi Chorin. There's also the Av Bezdin of Westphalia. Now, Westphalia is where the first Reform group temple begins, and it has sort of a school also. Al Odot Eza Heterim V'Tikunot. This book is about certain leniencies and tikkunim, fixings, repairs. Asher yistu achachamim harabanim anshe consistoria b'medinas Westphalia, that the rabbis of the consistoria made in Westphalia. As I mentioned, this book, which is really a letter, it doesn't seem like it was really meant to be published. Huva lidefus, it's brought to the press al yedei achuzat meriehu, through the hand of one of his friends. So the rabbi who wrote it, Rabbi Steinhardt, did not actually publish it. It's published by this person, Heidenheim. And what they use here for the date, and as we've already talked about, what verse you pick to signify the date seems to have some significance, because they could have picked any verse. All they're doing is saying these four letters out of this verse, and Akev Tishma'un. So that obviously is the beginning of Parshat Akev. Bahaya Akev Tishma'un. If you will listen. Akev. Akev is hard to know what it means, but Rashi there says it means the mitzvot, the commandments that a person dashes with their foot, right? Like the word Yaakov is from the word ankle. Akev means an ankle. Via Akev Tishman. Over there it means if only you will listen. So the question is, what's going on here? Is the significance of using this phrase, if only you will listen, meaning those who are more traditional or who are opposed to him, need to listen? Or is this Akev like, we don't think about, is he sort of hinting at that there is a stepping on certain traditions here? Akev Tishmaun, Rashi says, means if you want the blessing, which is what that parsha is talking about, pay attention to the commandments that are small, that people might stample with their ankle, with their foot. So the question is, what does this mean? Why is Heidenheim picking this date? Now, it's possible that this date was picked by Rabbi Steinhardt. Rabbi Steinhardt, it doesn't seem like knew that this was going to be published. So whether this phrasing for the date, this verse to use for the date, is what was chosen by Steinhardt in the letter. Was this in the original letter or not? Obviously, we don't know. But I think Ekav Tishmun it could go either way. It could be, if you will listen, meaning if you, the Jewish people, will listen to this letter, then you'll have blessing. Or maybe it means, maybe it's a kind of not criticism, because I don't think he's publishing it as a criticism, but maybe it's, we are stamping on certain small customs here. Because the first thing that this book is about is changing the custom of kitniyot, which is kind of radical. Now, it depends how and why you do it. We saw it before Moshe Klunitz did it, and he quoted from the Maharam Mintz, who was his rabbi, that you could change kitniyot for if people are in very dire straits, like the army. And that's kind of what the argument is here, but it very quickly gets adopted to be more than the army. He basically touches on about 10 things in this letter. The first one is kitniyot, and I want to look at actually a different thing. The kitniyot question is a pretty big one. The Chassam Sofer obviously is going to write and disagree with him, but the Chassam Sofer has a lot of respect for him. We can see that in one of the Chassam Sofer's letters. There's a Hakdama, sort of introduction, I guess, to the letter. Now, this is written, I assume, by Rabbi Steinhardt. Well, maybe not. No. So no, this introduction is written by the publisher Heidenheim, and he says, I got this letter. This is where he apologized. I think we did this maybe last week. He says, I got this letter from my friend, and he didn't say I could publish it, but I am publishing it because I think it's so important, which seems to us a little bit of a chutzpah. But he says I'm doing it to stop people from fighting. I know how straight the heart is of my friend, the rabbi who wrote this. V'tov mazgo l'manash. I know he will forgive me for publishing this. Ha'areva v'hanimim, these beautiful words that he's written. Ekev asher ruchi b'kirbi nidna rak lahodia. My intent is only to share these good things that he's written, to spread them out in Judah among the people of God. I'm not doing it, for my own purposes. Kibaladei misefer ma'at asher ekach nafshi l'nefashot eze yechidei skula rivami. I command to send all the books that are published to the author. So it sounds like he's publishing it and sending them to the author. So he's publishing it, but he's not giving it to people. It sounds like he's giving it to the author because he wants to encourage the author to spread it around. How the author felt about that, I don't know, but obviously he didn't have the chutzpah to, publish it and spread it around himself. You could imagine people doing this, where the author, who's a friend, doesn't think it's worthy of publication, and the friend publishes it. Here's a box of books. This is in Kessel, which is the place where the first Reform temple was. In fact, there is a picture online of the Reform temple in Kessel that was established by Israel Jacobson, and it's at this time, it's like 1815, a prayer space. We only have a picture of the outside. Here it is. But this was they call it First Reformed Temple, opened 1810, Sessin, which is in the Rhine near Kassel. And this is Israel Jacobson, this show. So this can't, I don't think, it could be a photograph from later. So it's not the same as the Hamburg Temple. It's very funny that they don't even list the Hamburg Temple on the Reform website. So the question of what do we mean by a Reform synagogue? And it's an interesting one. Obviously talking about changes in prayer. So here he writes the first thing about so this is Rabbi Steinhardt writing in the beginning of the letter to Holdenheim, his friend, and he writes words of introduction, and he has his own hakdam, his own introduction. I wanted to take a look at something. It's actually a tshuva, interestingly, about, so this first one is on Kitniot. It's fairly long. It's obviously in depth. He's a tremendous Talmid Chacham. But, and the other things are about, they're pretty short. This is still Kitniot. Second one is about sugar on Pesach and tea. Apparently, in fact, if you look in Shulchan Aruch, he says you shouldn't use sugar on Pesach because it had a likelihood of having grain in it. And tea seemed to be also an issue. And he basically says, this isn't an issue. Or it's not an issue in our time. It's not an issue at all. And it's not so, it doesn't seem to have been so radical. And then he says, what was asked to me about what they're doing in a Beit Knesset Shel Chinuch, Beit Knesset for children, Shelo Likro B'Torah B'Shem Ela B'Ramiz Ba'alma. They're not reading in the Torah with like the right notes. And it seems like a lot of what was done in this early Reform temple was like education for children. And then, for instance, you can see this also, right? These are all Israel Jacobson has appointed him as the head of this group, and he's, I think, writing. I think a lot of this is for that temple. Asher ota nafshecha ladat mahut hamisharim hayaladim. That in this school, this temple in Sessin also had like a school, a reform school. In order to educate the children, they're doing songs. They're doing like a choir. Is that okay? Is that a good way to teach kids? Remember, the only thing before this about teaching children is a cheder, right? You don't have Santa Farrell Hirsch's. I don't think schools yet. This is pretty early on. This is like 1815. New ways of teaching. Number 6 is interesting. Seems like the first change that they were making was not to say Anam Zmiros, except on Yom Kippur. Rakbalel Yom Kippurim, but Anam Zmiros b'chol Shabbos Yom Tov Kfar Noda, Asher Tzivchu Hashir Hazeh Hagon. Now, so there were those who were opposed to Anam Zmirot, because I think it was so anthropomorphic that the Maharal did not think singing Anam Zmiros was a good idea. So this Reform Temple has enacted, they're not going to say Anam Zmiros, they're only going to say it on Yom Kippur, and only on Yom Kippur. but they're not going to say it on Shabbos. V'harama he leads b'adam achaber v'gam Rav Yavitz man v'lam l'chus v'makam omer she'az hivu shelo yomru b'merutza. You shouldn't say it quickly. You have to say it very slowly. And it's a very mystical thing. Banu ef shelo omer b'chol yom ki'im banu ligmar in mafsikin. So this is the question and the answer. He's basically saying, don't say Anam Zmiras on Shabbos anymore, just once a year. Masha Shamad Aleinu Lemar Shah Hatikninu B'Medinosenu. This is what I was wanting to look at. The Sephardic custom for saying Kaddish is that everybody says it together. The Ashkenazic custom until this time till recently, was that only one person said Kaddish. And if you look in the halacha books, they're like, okay, you could draw straws to see who's going to say each Kaddish, but it was devolving. You see this in halacha, that it would devolve into fistfights or something like that. Because some of the commentators on the Shulchan Aruch are like, you have to find a way to divvy it up, and here's who gets precedence. And it was really becoming like a fight. It's kind of crazy, and it sounds crazy, but it's not that hard to believe. And so he wants to make this takana that in our lands, Shakola Avelim Yom Kulam Kaddish Biyachad, that all the mourners should say Kaddish together. We find in the Achronim different laws about this. And the Achronim write a lot about who gets precedent, but let's just change it and do it the way the Sephardim do it, and everybody will say Kaddish. So Chassam Sofer was opposed to this, but he didn't think it was so crazy. Now, it's become obviously very popular today. I mean, many shuls do this. By the way, this whole thing at Kesher, which I've seen at one or two other shuls, which is the Kaddish after Aleinu is for art site, it's because Kaddish altogether is not that old. I mean, this is not a long time ago. It was 1815, and this is a radical move to have everybody say Kaddish together. So, somebody who had a yard site once a year is like, yeah, I want my own Kaddish. So it's not a crazy, I see where it comes from. I think it's easier just to have everybody do Kaddish together, but it's not crazy to have this Kaddish after Aleinu thing for yard site. And so then he has a tshuva about why he basically argues why it's okay to do Kaddish altogether. But the average shul in 1815, there was nothing else but Orthodoxy, obviously. That's not how it worked. It worked the way the Achronim write about it, that there was precedence and they would draw straws, and sometimes it would lead apparently to fighting. And it doesn't seem radical to us because it's what we always do, but change, especially changing prayer, can be a bit radical. If I said tomorrow that that's it, we're not doing Anam Zmirat anymore, halachically it's no big deal really, but people would see it as strange. So what happens? The truth is, our prayer services do change a lot, but they morph over time. Things happen. Somebody forgets, and then that's just how it happens. I think, for instance, Kesher's customs have probably changed a ton over time, and that's how most of these shuls are, unless they're very well organized or very recent shuls that wrote things down. It morphs over time. Okay, so I will then. I'm going to be away tomorrow for about a week, so we'll start again on Monday the 30th. Have a good
safe travels. Thanks, Rabbi.
Thank you very much to everybody.